Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Pastors.
Yeah,
Isn't that adorable?
sure.
Which one of these is not like the
Everyone's
other?
real excited for PB&J.
It was PB&J before that.
Yeah. Was Scott come up with that?
No, that's old.
That's old.
He wants to think he did. Yeah, this is PB&J is old.
It is.
It was Pastor Bell and Joe at the time,
Right.
or Pastor Bell and Johnny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But now it's official. Pastor Brady and Justin. We should make a shirt.
I think officially it's Pastors Brady and Justin. If you're gonna do it that way.
Sure.
Right.
Well, I
Yeah.
just like to go by Justin, so. But
You
we
do?
should make a little T-shirt that, like
Okay.
Brady's the peanut butter's half of the sandwich, I'm the dairy half of the sandwich.
Coming together.
We're like holding hands.
Oh my gosh, that's a
like
cute
an open
costume
sandwich.
idea.
Yeah.
Next t-shirt order.
For next trunk
You know
or
what?
treat.
Share a microphone. I changed my mind.
For next trunk or treat, we'll be PB&J. How cute.
Yeah, people would love that if we
They would.
did show.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for
How is it now that you're a pastor, Brady? Tell us all the changes that have happened in your life.
I mean, it all feels about the same, guys, to be honest with you. There is just from that service though on Sunday, there is just kind of still a sense of, are you sure? Like, because I think it's like still sinking in, or it's like, oh, we have this service and all of a sudden now I'm given this new status or whatever. So I think it's kind of like, I guess from the service, God did this thing, but like from my perspective, it seems the same still. So yeah, I don't know.
You needed a little more pomp and circumstance to really feel like a pastor.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. We needed some incense or something, or
Yeah.
some smoke and some candles.
Like knighting you or something. and
Yeah, there we
a little
go.
procession.
Yeah. That was awesome though, having all the pastors there and just each sharing a word. That was really meaningful. It was really going into it. I'll be honest, I was kind of like, I just want to get this over with, but it actually really was special. It was.
Yeah. Great turnout from the area pastors.
Yeah.
That was nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
So.
They're really rooting for you.
Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah.
It's almost like they like you. You know?
Or have pity on him. They're like, this poor guy.
Man,
This was the best he could do was find this place.
he does not know. He knows not what he's done.
Greg Taylor said, man, the district president kept saying, like, he's the pastor here, he's the pastor. He's like, are they pushing you out?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that.
I was like, well, definitely President Snow would like Brady more than me. So,
I would think so too.
yes.
Yeah.
He would be like, hey, guys, if you want to take this guy.
He
you
said
can
something
have
to
him."
the effect of me, pulled me aside, and he goes, Brady, I really think he's kind of like a son to me.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I
who
can
said
see
that?
that. Pastor Snow said that. And then he said, and Pastor Justin's like that annoying neighbor kid that comes over and roots through your pantry and breaks all your stuff.
I'm like the little kid from Up. The little.
You're right.
What's his name? Russell?
I don't know. I see the resemblance,
I'm guessing.
actually.
I know. On Vicarage, that's what they called me.
Russell?
Yeah.
After that movie?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it for
Are
a
you
while.
kidding?
I gotta go
No,
watch it again.
The office manager, she'd call me Russell.
Were you breaking things?
I had a lot of time on my hand on Vicarage, and I did a lot of things. I had a blast. I took them out. So my senior pastor was very gullible. So on my we missed my birthday, and I made a big deal about it. I was like, hey, you guys didn't celebrate my birthday. They were like, we don't celebrate birthdays. And I was like, well, you really should. And that's a shame. And so, like, it was right towards the end of my vicarage. So it was 3 months after my birthday. So 9 months before my birthday. And so I said, we're going to go out for my conception day. And my senior pastor was like, what? And I said, this is something we do in the South. Because he always made fun of me because I was from the South. Because he apparently had never met anybody from the South. And he would always make fun of me, like, from being from. And I said, this is something we do in the South. We celebrate conception days. He's like, are you serious? It's like, yeah. He's like, well, what do we do? Fine, we'll do it, you know? I was like, well, we go out to breakfast, you know, because that's like culmination of the day and culmination of your life, you know? And then I said, and then we'll do like a little field trip for the day. And he was like, okay, fine. So we got the church van out. I drove everybody to IHOP. We were eating breakfast. And I start pulling out pictures of my parents. I swear to you, I got my mom to mail out pictures of like my dad and my mom from that time, and the house they were living in and stuff. And I pull out these pictures and granted, 95% of the staff, because there's like 10 of them, knew I was completely joking, but my gullible senior pastor was like, what? And so I'm pulling out a picture of my mom, my dad. I start going through the story of my conception night, and he's like, you really do this in the South? You do this every year to remember your conception? I was like, yes. And then I took him on a field trip to this like animal rescue place.
And this is where it happened.
Yeah. So yeah.
Wow.
So I had a lot of fun.
You were
I would say you
rascal.
put a lot of thought into that.
You really
Well,
did.
like I said, I had a lot of time. A lot of time on my hands. So I did all kinds of squirrely little things out there. So she would call me Russell, because I'd just like walk into the office and be like, "Hey, everybody, I'm gonna do," you know, like, yeah. So
Wow.
You're a lot, you know.
yeah,
You've tamed it, though.
I have. Well, GraceHill keeps me busy. I found.
Right. You don't have as much spare time.
I don't have. Well, but on Vicarage, like, I mean, I'm sure you would love this. When it was my week to preach, they literally had me do nothing. I had 40 hours a week to write a sermon.
You're like, what am I going to do with the other 39?
Right. Like, so like for a whole week. And not to mention, like I was only preaching like once every 6-8 weeks or something like that. So I knew what I was preaching on for 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so you're like, well, as soon as you get an idea, you write it down, you know. And so, yeah, the week of, you know, my sermon's already, you know, rough drafted. And then, yeah, I get 40 hours that week to sit and do nothing but be in my office and work on this. And so, yeah, I had a lot of time.
You didn't know how good you had it.
Right, yeah.
What were you thinking?
I don't know.
So was that a rude awakening when it's your first
When
call?
you actually
Was it a
go to
big
work?
shift? And
Oh, no, I knew that
Yeah,
was not what
yeah.
the real world was going to be like. But I soaked it up while I was there.
Exactly. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
I mean,
Take
I
advantage of the
I
time
went to
given.
like a ton of basketball games because they had multiple people that had season tickets to the Nuggets and wouldn't go. And so like I was like, I'll go. You know, who's got tickets? I'll go. So I went to a bunch of basketball games, baseball games.
Wow.
Watched a lot of TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, back to you, Pastor Brady. Have you been calling
Yeah.
yourself Pastor?
No, I think I've still been just calling myself Brady. But I did update my my signature line on my email.
You did.
Oh, did
yes,
you?
you
That
did.
was
Have
just
you
on that.
updated the website? I thought I saw the website still says Vicar.
Oh, it does. Yeah, we do need to update that.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Ted DeLuey. He drew attention. He's like, you need to update your signature line.
There
It's
you
like,
go.
there's probably a lot of areas I need to update that. I
We should
guess.
do a whole episode of shout outs to Ted.
For
Yeah.
all the things that he brings to the
He
attention.
does. He brings a lot of
Yeah.
things to
Oh, yeah.
our attention about the
It's
podcast.
observant. Oh, yeah. Well, that too.
Yeah.
Do you have like a name on your desk? A name thing?
I do not.
Ah,
I have that one from my ordination.
you do? We can get him one.
Yeah. I don't know.
We
I
get one
forget.
for your office door, but not so fast.
In a year, he'll have an office store.
a little
getting
more
there.
than a year.
Well, yeah, we're only like 13
Yeah.
months away.
What's going on at the land?
Right?
Nothing over the last 2 weeks. They don't go out there in -20. So, but I mean, look at the weather for the next like 2 weeks. It's all 40s and 50s.
Oh yeah.
Like so, yeah, they'll get caught up. But I think steel's getting delivered by the end of this week. So, but I know that they didn't get to pour the pads. Does that sound right? Pour the pads
Yeah.
that they were supposed to do. So I think they got to catch up on pouring pads, and then they can start putting up steel.
Right.
But I would imagine if the weather stays like it is,
Yeah.
for the next couple of weeks, they'll get caught back up.
Nice.
And
That'd be good.
they factor in that there'll be weather and
Have
stuff
to.
like that. So
Yeah, have to.
yep.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. So you will have a door. So that time,
Yeah.
if you're still around, God willing,
Then we can.
then we can put your name on your door.
Name tag. Yeah.
That's right.
I like it. Let's do it.
Brady, you told the story in your sermon about how you asked your father-in-law for his daughter's hand in marriage.
Yeah.
You want to tell the whole story?
I mean, that's kind of the
What did you
bulk
say?
of it for.
That's got the bulk.
At what point did you actually?
How
Yeah.
nervous were you? I guess is my question. How, like, you were living in their basement,
Right. Yeah. Right.
right? Okay.
Right.
Eating their food,
Yeah. Yeah.
using their electricity,
Yeah.
their water, their
Yeah.
bathroom.
Yeah, all the above.
Did you have your own toothbrush, or were you sharing that too?
Yeah, to borrow a toothbrush.
Was it like Meet the Parents, where he's like, "Hey, Greg, it's the 21st century. I know, but
Yeah. No, that was someone asked me afterwards for the full story, and I was in the basement. Allison was on the top floor. It's a 2-story house, and they were in the middle.
gated, locked, unlock and key.
The princess was in the tower.
Right,
I was in the
exactly.
The ogre was in the dungeon.
That's pretty much how it went. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no,
Did
it
they have
was
creaky floors?
probably yeah.
Oh, she'd throw her hair out the window, and he.
Rapunzel.
Yeah.
Let your hair down. No, it was kind of funny.
He's reciting Romeo and Juliet to her.
Out though, Romeo. Here I am.
Yeah, who else is out there? What else you got? But no, it actually the conversation went well as I remembered, and I didn't realize how well it may have gone. Or I found out later that it made my father-in-law pretty emotional. So like we went out and we were doing some stuff later that day, and we came back and he had like the home videos on of like. The joke is that it was like the video of when her brother was born, like the hospital video, and it was like I didn't get to watch it. They turned it off, but it was like home videos were playing, and he was like emotional, like living the memories back again, and
Oh my!
just that was like a big step.
Thank God they didn't make you watch that. That's awkward.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family. Watch her be born.
This is where it all began. Yeah.
Nope.
But,
So how did you ask him?
I don't remember exact words.
Did he know it was coming?
To be honest, I think so. Yeah, because I had gotten the ring. Well, shortly after that, then I got the ring, and I think they had a sense that was probably going to happen that summer when I was staying with him and stuff, and so
They knew you had the ring?
after I got the ring, because they were helping me like hide it and like covering for me
so
when I
they
would
knew
go.
you had the ring.
Not till after I asked them.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So yeah, they were helping play along with it. And I think at one point I had to like go pick it up, and like her mom kind of covered for me that I was running some errands or something
Gotcha.
like that. So after that, they kind of helped me plan out the whole thing. But
So he said yes.
he
Did
say
he give you
yes,
any
yeah.
words of wisdom?
Yeah. Gosh, again, I don't have a great memory of all the exact words. I think it just was, I was so nervous that it just kind of like flew by. I was like, what just happened? I think I just committed to something here. So.
Me, your daughter, rings
It might have been something.
ceremony. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
It
you?
might have been well, because I was nervous too, because I didn't grow up around like hunting and stuff like that. So I was like, I gotta like make a good impression here, and like
Right.
So I'm like
You trying to
nervous
shoot-
about
shoot well?
holding, yeah, like doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it was a good day though. So.
Should I tell the story about when I?
Yes. That's what I want to
No
do.
way.
Let's all tell the
No
stories. I'll tell mine.
Mine didn't go as well.
Tell the story. Should I get some tissues?
Oh, we got some.
Well, you know
We
the
got a whole
story.
box.
Yeah, tell the story. The listening. What did we decide to call
Yeah.
everybody?
The buzzies.
The buzzies. Yeah.
They want to know.
Yeah, they want to know.
Inquiring buzzies want to know.
Yeah.
Well, my father-in-law is very soft-spoken, and he doesn't say a lot. and so I actually sat down with Sarah's mom and her dad at the same time.
Yeah.
And her mom was emotional, and she's like, I'm so excited and I'm so happy. And then, the camera pans to my father-in-law slowly. And you know how like it shows, like all of a sudden it goes from color to black and white, and there's like music that sort of like starts playing.
You're like describing a whole movie scene here.
I know, yeah, a horror movie, if you will. So he sat there in his chair, and Mary's dabbing some tears, and I was too, because when she gets like, I get emotional when other people get emotional, so like I'm a little emotional. Pan left. Well, all I'll say is you guys have a very difficult road ahead of you.
Because you were both coming out of previous marriages. Right?
Sort of. We're going to get all into this? So, we both.
Isn't that why he said that?
It was the blended family aspect.
Right.
And I think maybe
Maybe
it was
he was just
my
like,
personality.
I've seen you two together.
Or maybe it was her. Like, I raised her, and good luck with that.
Could have been all
Truer
those things.
truer words have never been spoken. Yeah, it was that. And like I very much listen, I appreciate.
Did you hug him and kiss him anyways?
No. I was like, good talk. See you at the wedding? Or no? No, it's just that he's a very measured person.
He is.
And, he's not one for, just saying things to say them, or he's, it's like, if he's going to say something, there's going to be meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And basically what he was saying is the way that you two have lived your lives up to this point is probably going to have some consequences and ramifications later.
Sure.
And I still talk about it today, and sure, yeah, like there were certainly bumps because of all that,
Yeah.
there were things that we had to deal with, and but yeah, I very much appreciated how real he was about it. I didn't doubt that. I didn't think like, oh, he doesn't think this is a good idea. That's not what I left with, but it wasn't your experience. How about yours?
Well, what did Allison's mom say? When she found out, was she excited?
So she wasn't there at the time, but then my father-in-law told her afterwards, and yeah, they were. Yeah, I think there was a good.
Can I have you
good
scooch
response
just
to
a little
that.
bit
So
that way?
I remember hugging her, coming back to the house.
Not that. That's
after
fine.
That point, so
Just you. The microphone's fine.
Okay.
There we go.
So
Thanks.
it was Joe was moving apartments, and so her parents came down to help her move, and I was there, and so we spent all morning loading up her apartment into a U-Haul,
Fun.
driving it across town, unloading it all, and so then they were driving me back to the seminary, 15 minutes away, and I forget, man. I don't remember now if they were taking me to ice cream to thank me or if it was my idea to go get ice cream, but we went
Probably
to
yours,
yeah.
knowing you.
But we went to Ted Drew's, which is a famous ice cream place in St. Louis. We grabbed ice cream. It was just three of us, and we were sitting on a bench, and I was like, well, now's as good a time as any, and so I remember I specifically said to her dad, I said,
He is a pastor.
he's a pastor, yeah. And I said, well, I'm getting ready to go out on vicarage. I'm going to Denver for a year, and she's going to be here. And I said, but of all things, this is the craziest thing. Like, I knew I wanted to marry Joe, but, like, I didn't have any money. I was a seminary student. So, like, literally right before I'm heading to and Joe and I went to look at rings at one point. And she was like, you know, I like this kind of ring and stuff like that, just in case you wanted to know, you know. And I was like, yep. And I saw the price tags. And I was like, you know, like, I got no money. So my plan was during vicarage to like save all my money and buy a ring, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And right before I head out on vicarage, I get a letter from the seminary saying, hey, we accidentally overcharged you. And they gave me a check for like $2,000.
Isn't that something?
And I was like, what?
So you went to the casino.
Right. I was like, let's double it. So of all things, I was like, so I went down to the jewelry store. Like I put it in the bank and I went down to the jewelry store that day and like I was like, I have this much money. What can I get?
I love that story.
So I had the ring, like, I don't know if I had it yet or if I had ordered it or whatever. And so I turned to her dad, you know, and I said, you know, I told him the story. I said, I was going to I was going to save up money over vicarage and buy a ring. But you know, the seminary actually gave me a check for $2,000. And so I would like to go get a ring. I'd like to marry your daughter, you know. And like her mom like jumps right in and goes, yes.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Really?
And I was like, well, you know, I just wanted to get your guys' blessing. And she's like, yes, you can. And I was like, okay. And her dad like still hadn't said anything. And I was like, Marlon, are you good with this?
You on board with this?
Cool. Yeah. And he goes, because at the time, like her family are diehard St. Louis Cardinals. Like her dad knows stats and players. And growing up, I was a Red Sox fan because their spring training home was Fort Myers.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'd always go to Red Sox games. And he looked at me, he goes, will you be a Cardinals fan? I said,
Love it.
yes.
Let's first things first.
Yeah. He goes, will you be a Cardinals fan? I said, yes. He goes, okay, sounds good. I was like,
all it took.
that was it. And so, yeah, we finished our ice cream and they drove me home.
Dude.
Nice.
And so then it took me, because Joe was working like nights and days. Like she was rotating her schedule. So she'd work like a Tuesday 12-hour and then like a Friday 12-hour at night. You know, like it was just, it was awful. And so I had the ring, but like I was like trying to wait for like a good time and think of something good to do. And like it had been like 3 weeks since I asked. And finally like her mom like called me. It was like, hey,
Cold feet?
just wondering, like,
Did you give that ring to somebody else? Or?
yeah, she's like, when is this happening? You know, and I told her, like, I was like, literally, you know, like, I was going to do it last week, but, like, you know, Joe was like, I'm super tired, and, you know, I'm not, you know, like, I don't want to go out tonight, you know, and so I got a reservation, so she was like, okay, and so I was like, okay, I got to do this, you know, and so I set a reservation for this, like, really nice restaurant in St. Louis, you know, I was going to just do it at a restaurant, like, people do, you know, because I was like, I don't have an idea of what to do. And it ended up that week that we went to her uncle's retirement party, and we were there with her whole family, you know, and all that. And I was just like, that's it. I'm doing it today. Like, I'm doing it today. So we went for a walk at a park, and I stopped on a bench.
Aww.
And I sat down, and she thought I was dumping her.
No.
Yeah. I sat her down on the bench. I said,
Why
hey,
would she ever think that you were going to do
I
it?
know. That's what I thought. Like,
Oh, no.
if one of us should be getting out of this relationship.
Yeah.
It should definitely be.
Yeah. No, but I sat her down on the bench and I was like, hey, look, and I worded it suspiciously on purpose. I was like, hey, I want to talk to you about our relationship.
Of course you did.
And
Russell?
yes, I know. And she was like, what? And I was like, I think we should make some big changes.
Oh my
and she was like, are you breaking up with me? Are you? And I was like, no, I'm not. And then like Mr. Suave, I opened up the ring upside down. Like,
Falls out. Goes rolling down the sidewalk.
right. You know, I was, you know, like I just opened it up upside down and she said yes. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's cool.
Did your wife know it was coming?
I think she did suspect it. So I guess I should say too, part of why I was nervous to ask is because, so the year prior to that, the fall before the summer when we got engaged, I had just gone off to optometry school. So I was in Houston, she was still finishing up school in Seward. And we had split for a few months in there, like just the stress of distance and like the school was demanding all that stuff. And so, I think that had really hurt her. And then I felt like her parents were always kind of suspicious of me after that. Like it was kind of hard to like get back into not in a bad way, but yeah, right, yeah, the circle of trust. Back to meet the parents again, yeah. But so
were you a pothead? No, you weren't.
Man, so many movie references. I love it.
You can milk a cat.
But yeah, I remember that was nerve-wracking. And I remember writing a letter to them trying to explain what happened. So
You wrote them a letter?
Oh my gosh,
I wrote
they
them a
still
letter.
have it?
And I don't
Can we
know
get our
for
hands
sure.
on it?
But like when we got back together, it was like, hey, like I know I heard.
Was
your
that like
daughter,
to get
and,
permission to come stay at the house?
Yeah.
Like,
And by the P.S., I'm gonna need a place to stay this summer. So hope you got a spot for me.
part of the rental agreement is I'm writing this letter to vouch for my character.
Yeah. So I think that was like, like it was like
Still hanging heavy over.
Yeah. So
she didn't think it was coming.
I think she kind of suspected it a little bit, but I kind of disguised it too. Like she had, and part of it too, she was getting ready to move to Houston. Mm-hmm. So like that was going to be happening. She had just gotten into business school down there. And so I got her like a t-shirt, like congratulations. But then in the bottom of the box was the ring. And then,
Wow, nice.
So I think because it was an anniversary kind of
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice.
Do you ever like get in arguments and you're like, we were on a break?
No. She would love that reference.
He doesn't get it.
She loves Friends.
Well, I'll tell you what. If we aren't three of the most blessed people, by way of
Look
love.
at that transition.
See how I do it?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
It's not my first time. We certainly are, and I take account of that every morning. The blessings of the marriage and our relationship and of our kids, because I'll tell you what, when it comes to to earthly blessings, there's nothing greater. There's nothing greater. And I love seeing you as a husband and a father. I love seeing you as a husband and a father. I loved your, I loved the story in the message. It was great. I never knew any of that actually. I never knew that you lived with them at the time, and that was a great story to share. Mm-hmm. So, great message.
So walk us through the message.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this week we dove into the Beatitudes, and I was really hoping to maybe find a little different angle to take with them. I think it's probably passages that have been used a lot, and I think the first thing that pops into my mind when I hear Beatitudes is like my grandma's patchwork pillow she used to have like on her chair. It's like that's like one of the most popular passages. So, so I hope it was maybe a little bit of a unique way just to tie it in with discipleship and how Jesus was teaching his disciples, how he was opening up this sermon, and just kind of an entry point into the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. I was reading a lot about that, how the view is that once you can kind of get your mindset in line with those Beatitudes, now you're ready to hear the rest of what Jesus has to preach and to teach on. So yeah, I feel like that was a valuable thing to walk into. The entry point to discipleship is to be emptied of ourselves, to take that out of the equation. It's about him, not us. And then as we're emptied of ourselves, now he can begin to fill us back up with the things that he empowers us to do, to then live as his disciples. And so that was really the idea behind it. And hopefully it was a message that stuck with people. So, yeah.
Something you said as you listed out, blessed are and the one that stuck with me was blessed are the poor in spirit. Mm-hmm. Because I think that can be taken in a lot of different ways. The poor in spirit. Well, does that mean like the downtrodden? the sad? Can it mean, those who are not spiritually connected with their God?
Yeah.
And how you laid that out, I thought was pretty eloquent.
Wow. Yeah. I think all of those are, and maybe too, that's for people too that don't really know what a lot of those mean. Like you hear them said over and over and like, oh, that sounds good. Like if you're this, you'll get this, or this, you'll get it. It almost sounds like a transaction or an exchange of what God's doing. But I think there's a deeper meaning there of, and with poor in spirit, not just that you're poor in spirit. We all are poor in spirit as the definition goes, but just our acknowledgement of that. And I think that's when our hearts are ready to have Jesus come in, is when we kind of, again, lay ourselves aside, recognize we're not bringing anything to the table, that in this relationship, he's the one that brings it all to the table. So as I think there's just a mentality of self-reliance in our culture, like, I'm going to get it done, like, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. That's kind of the American mentality, right? And so I think that bleeds over into the church a lot of times, and it's easy to get in that mindset. And so it's hard to get yourself in this different headspace of, it's not about me, it's not about what I'm bringing, that Jesus does it all. That almost sounds like cheating in a way, but yeah, so I think it's a message we need to hear over and over repeatedly to kind of grasp it.
Yeah, to lose what you said, the fact that it's not a transactional relationship. There's nothing that we could do, there's nothing that we could bring that would have any kind of bearing on our salvation. And I'm really curious to ask you, Justin, where Brady got it wrong, because this was his first message as a pastor. So certainly you were sitting there going,
well, once you're a pastor, you get everything right. So
is that how it works? Did you know that? You said you didn't feel any different at all.
Yeah. Well, and full disclosure too, I think I felt a little more pressure this week.
I wondered if you did.
Imagine, yeah.
I was wondering about that.
I would imagine.
And I honestly felt like, I think 11 went a little better. I don't know what people thought, but I felt like 8 and 9:30 I was struggling at times. I even lost my place at one point at 9:30, and it felt like an eternity to like find it again. I'm sure it felt like an eternity.
It was all of 4 seconds.
In the seats too. Well, that's the thing. It's like I felt like I was quiet for like 2 minutes trying to find my spot again. It's like, say something, Brady. Say something. Like, you're dying here, man.
Say anything.
And so
you should have broken out in song. You had that hymn.
Right, we could have just started singing. Yeah.
I thought like in those instances, it'd be good that if you do lose your place, just to say, you know what, I got to take a second here. The Holy Spirit's talking to me.
Yeah,
I got to listen. I just need to be still. Quiet.
Yeah.
Until you get it, and you're like, okay, now I know what he wants me to say.
Yeah. Now I got it. I'm back.
I loved it because what's interesting, and people, I don't think people can quite appreciate or fully comprehend what it's like to preach back to back to back in the morning like that.
And based on attendance, it's going to be back to back to back to back.
Stop. Yeah. Stop it. But seriously, because there are even times, and I think I've probably mentioned this to you guys before, that, by 11 o'clock, it's like, I'll be in the middle of a song going, wait, are we heading to the bridge? Did we already do the bridge? I think we did the bridge. And we hadn't done the bridge. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to keep track of that. It's a lot. And the faces are different at every service. But it certainly is, it's a tall order to give a message. And Justin, you said last week that you were preaching, and then at 9:30 you went rogue.
Yeah,
you went off, and in his head he was like, "How do I get this back on track? Stop talking. Stop talking."
Yeah. Whenever I start thinking in my head while I'm actually speaking, it never goes well.
That's a terrifying experience.
But I went rogue at 9:30, and then I don't know if I ever got it back, but back to. I think maybe just hop into each verse here. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And I think it's important to emphasize, like, that's not talking about depression. Right? That's not, we're talking about blessed are those and how did you put it in the sermon? The poor in spirit
Right.
are the
spiritually bankrupt.
Yes.
Right.
Poverty in our
Yeah.
or unworthiness before God.
right. They're unworthiness for God. I think that's a great way to put what poor in spirit is saying. Is just like, look, I know, like, I'm not. And Brady's talked about the first half of the Beatitudes are really emptying of yourself, and the second half is filling yourself up with what Jesus needs us to be disciples. But the second part of that verse, the blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, why would you be blessed if you felt spiritually bankrupt? You felt like there wasn't a lot of worthiness in you. Well, because God says, yours is the kingdom of heaven. And when you take that phrase, well, what does that mean? If I all of a sudden have this overwhelming sense of I'm not worthy, how is the kingdom of heaven mine? And what God describes in the Bible the kingdom of heaven as is every place where his goodness, where his light, where his joy reigns through in this world. That the kingdom of heaven is for the place where all of that goodness, blessing, joy, love can be experienced. And so you're like, well, how does that happen? How all of a sudden when I feel unworthy is the kingdom of God mine? Well, because of exactly what you said. The self-righteous don't walk into the kingdom of heaven. The ones that say, I earn it, look at my life, look how awesome I am, look how deserving I am, they don't walk into the kingdom of heaven. It's those that say, I'm unworthy. Those that say, it's all about Jesus, that walk in. Then you hop into verse 4, blessed are those who mourn. And you talked about what the mourn there means. What does it mean?
Not necessarily just being sad about things that happen, but mostly sorrow over the sin that's in our lives and sorrow over the state of creation as it's corrupted by sin.
Right. And when you look at that, those who mourn over their sin, who mourn over the darkness and the sin in this world, and it says, for they shall be comforted. Well, how do they end up being comforted? Because they realize this isn't all this world is. That at the end of days, that we are going to receive comfort because all those things that we mourned will be no more. All those things that we see will never happen again. And even you can take death and mourning that way as well. That's gone too. Like there will never be death again. And so we get to experience that comfort. And then you take something like verse 5. And this is an interesting one. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And you talked about the meek.
For meekness. And this was one that I was interested in too. I've heard it defined a lot of ways. The thing I found and settled on was kind of the lowly in status, those that the world looks upon and isn't that impressed with them, but they just kind of have this quiet confidence, this peace, this no pretense about them. It's just like, that I guess quiet confidence is kind of how I view meekness. And I don't know if I shared that necessarily, but of the definitions I read, that's what seemed to pop up.
But then what does it mean that those that are not braggadocious about themselves or anything like that, what does it mean that they inherit the earth? Because I think it gets back to exactly what you said. Like this isn't a list of do these things and these things will happen for you.
Right.
It's when your spirit matches these things can happen. And when you're not braggadocious about yourself, but you're meek and you inherit the earth. Well, in the last day, we know that God's going to make a new heavens and a new earth, and we're not servants here. We're not the workers. God says we're the adopted children. That it's ours. That we share in Jesus' inheritance. And so when you start looking at these things, because I think people can get too worldly of a view in these things, where they look at this and go, this is talking about the here and now. If I'm meek, I'm going to get big things. If I mourn, I'm going to get this. If I get, and really Jesus is talking about the big picture here. He's talking about the world to come because I think of it from God's perspective. God's like, look, you're on this earth for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And then there's forever. And I've been forever. I've been eternal. I've been from the beginning. And this little time that you're on this earth, to God, he's like, okay, look, you're mourning right now, or you're meek right now, or you're like, but here's what's coming for you. And so, when he's talking about your meekness, it's not that if you humble yourself, God's going to lift you. And this is prosperity gospel 101. The prosperity gospel that's out there that's like, do this, and then God will bless you richly right here, right now in this life. And that's not what this verse is talking about. That, hey, if I'm meek, I get to inherit everything. I riches and power and all that. No, it's like, hey, if you live in this quiet, not trying to build yourself up, make much of yourself, well, guess what? One day you will be lifted up. One day you will be a adopted child of the Lord of the universe, and all that is His will be yours too. And then you hop to 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And what did you pull out of that one?
Yeah, and I think that one seemed like kind of a summary to the first 3. That when you're that poor in spirit, you recognize your poverty before God. When you're mourning your sin, when you're living that meek life, you're going to hunger and thirst then for the things of God. Because I think, like what you're saying, if my mindset is okay, I'm going to be meek so that I can get this thing.
Right.
Like that's totally.
You're
fails.
not fooling God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
No.
yeah. And so it's like these things just happen when it's like humility. Like as soon as I say I'm humble, I'm no longer humble.
Right.
It's the same thing of like as soon as I like, I'm gonna trick God and like trick Him into giving me these things by pretending to be meek or something. Like I think God sees the heart of who truly is hungering for the right things, and He's like, I'm faithful to give and give abundantly. In that situation. But,
And so in verse 6, when it's talking about hungering and thirsting for righteousness, literally saying like, I desire, like my deepest desire in my heart is to be seen, to have right standing before the Lord. Like in order, you look at those first 3 verses, it takes remembering who you really are, remembering your brokenness, remembering you're unworthy, and I'm hungering and I'm thirsting. God, please allow me to be righteous before you. And God says, and one day you'll be satisfied. Like that will come for those that go that way.
yeah.
And then it kind of flips to blessed are the merciful, because they shall receive mercy, which is kind of obvious. Like if you're going to not give out, because mercy is withholding deserved punishment. So if you're going to be merciful to people, God's going to show mercy to you. And you brought up the unmerciful servant.
The parable of
a very common one. And then blessed are the pure in heart, and I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
The pure in heart, for they shall see God. So where do you go with that one in your study?
Well, and that's hard because like no one could ever claim to be pure in heart, like this side of heaven or in and of themselves. And so I really enjoyed that Psalm 51 aspect, and we included in the study guide this week for small groups. Like that's the digging deeper part, is just look at Psalm 51 a little bit. But David just has this incredible prayer to God of like, God, come in and wash me, come in and clean me, come in and make me pure. Like he knows that he has no shot. And so I feel like the pure in spirit, like they're tied together. Like to be pure in spirit is to recognize, or pure of heart is to recognize I could never be pure of heart. And like God comes in and actually does the work then. And I mean, it's hard. It's a little hard to say practically, like, well, how do I go about making myself pure in heart? How do I reach this goal? And it's like,
well, and Psalm 51 says the only way we can get there is through confession, right?
Yeah.
Like only once we confess our sins and God can forgive us and cleanse us. That in that moment we're for a moment. Pure in heart, until the next thing, but we have that opportunity to be the pure in heart, and it says, for they shall see God. What, how do you take that?
I mean, I think again, there's that kind of throughout this passage, this kind of now but not yet. Like I think there is some degree of blessedness to be had now as you live this life, but again, like you were saying, it points to that ultimate day when we do get to see him. And I guess in my mind comes to like on that last day when he does show up, like we can be joyful in that moment. Like, I mean, Revelation describes like that's going to be a terrifying moment,
right? When
he shows up, and it's like, okay, I might be able to approach that day without fear. I mean, there'll still be fear and trembling. I don't know exactly how that plays out, but I think we look forward to seeing God rather than.
And it also talks about in the end days that we will look up our face or that we should look up our face because our salvation draws near. Like Christians, even though all the bad stuff is going to be happening in the final days, like that we can lift up our face because our salvation draws near, like that hope. Because we will see God. And then, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And I mean, that one's kind of an obvious one if we're going to be, and I like what you said, it's not a passive thing, it's an active thing. Of like, I'm going to seek out making this right and to make peace, not only for myself, but for others. Like, I'm going to try and put, because I mean, let's be honest, how many people do we know, we have a teenager now, not technically, but, and I work with the middle school and high school youth, and there are people that just like to stir drama, that literally love to just mix it up and see what happens, and we're called to be peacemakers. That when we see conflict, that we don't go and make it worse, that we actually actively, like you said, go out to try and put people back together, reconcile people back together, and ourselves, and that he says, like, that'll be the mark of being called a child of God, is a peacemaker, not a divider, And then blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that, you hit on that one. That's a pretty obvious one too. If you're standing up for the Lord and you're standing up for what God calls us to, and what's right, I think that happens a lot in our society today, that there at times becomes a cost for standing up for what's right. But if you're willing to do that, yours is the kingdom of heaven. Like, you will receive reward for these things. And then blessed are you when you're persecuted and all kinds of evil against you. And I love that verse 11, because there are people out there that are like, oh, see, everyone's against, and it's like, no, that's because you're a jerk. Like, that's not it. I mean, there's a key word in there where it says they falsely, are against you. Not truthfully against
not
you.
Appropriately.
Yeah, appropriately against you.
Right.
They're falsely
it's
against
an important
you.
distinction.
I think in our world today we see that in all the isms and the he's a bigot, he's a racism, sexism, like all these labels that get thrown on, and it's like, well, okay, you're gonna say all these things against me just because I stand on the word, and that he says rejoice because they persecuted the prophets who were before you, that we get to share in this suffering.
Yes.
Wow.
Which is such a
terrifying
reality.
Tall order.
Yeah.
But, this is what Jesus says too. Later on in Matthew, we're going to talk about it. Like, I sent the prophets to you. In the sign of Jonah, he's going to talk about, I sent the prophets to you, and you didn't listen to them, and you reviled them, and you killed them. And then, I sent my son to you, and you didn't listen to him, and you killed him. And so it's one of those things that I think Jesus is encouraging his church. Like, when you step out and look at the big picture of this, that's the thing we see, is that Jesus is encouraging his church. Like, you need to have bigger eyes than the here and the now. That you are going to be blessed. Because I think this becomes one of the biggest issues in Christianity, is, God, if I follow you, what is in it for me? Right?
Yeah, right.
And a lot of times, Jesus is telling us, on this earth, not a lot. Not a lot. Because I don't want you to live for this. And he's going, but if you want to know whether you're going to be blessed, oh my gosh, yes, you're going to be blessed. Like, if you live this way, if you do these things, like, if you make these kinds of impacts, like, you're going to be blessed. The kingdom of God is yours. Your inheritance is yours. You'll be satisfied in all the things that but in this life, this is what you're going to face. And so, Pastor Brady, Why do you think that's such a hard message for? Because I think it's one of those things that if you ask most Christians, they will with their mouth acknowledge they understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with our hearts and our minds, we struggle to actually embrace that. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely.
So why do you think this is such a strong battle for us as Christians?
Well, I think we're beings that we're very much in the moment, but we're also, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess like we're sensory beings. Like we know what we feel right now, and like sometimes that's pain, sometimes that's hurt, sometimes that's we feel like we've been cheated, or we feel like we're missing out on something that I feel like if you polled 100 people, you'd have a pretty high percentage saying like life's okay, but it's not great. You know what I mean? Like in this life here and now. And so I think it's hard for us to wrap our minds around like, man, what is that? What do you mean I'm going to be blessed? What like? It's hard to grasp something that we have maybe never experienced, and so it's hard to imagine what that could be like. And so it's a question of faith, big time. We're trusting in God in a big way to say, okay, God, like I'm not seeing much evidence for this now, but I trust that something is coming, and so I think that's the value of these constant reminders. These are the words that Jesus said. He has promised this to us, and the more we can hear it, the better to start to grasp and kind of understand. I think he gives us little glimpses, and it's important to look for those little glimpses, but it's a lot of trust for something that's far away yet, or seems far away yet.
Seems far.
Well, and yeah, I think we live in a immediate gratification culture.
For sure, yeah.
We go to the gym for a week, and if we don't see the results we want, we're like, what a waste! All this pain, all this, work, and I don't have my six pack yet, and we start at the bottom floor of the company to work our way to the top, and we give up after 2 years because we're not at the top yet, and I think it's very hard to get people to look at eternity the way God looks at eternity. That like what we're doing and what we're going through now, it is just temporary, and it's only setting us up for what is to come. And I think that's the challenge is, there are glimpses of what's coming. But there's also a lot of stuff that we go through now that is hard to walk through. And Jesus, I think in the Beatitudes is trying to remind us like, your reward is coming. But you just got to keep persevering through to get to the reward. And that's hard. That's hard for all of us to recognize. And there are times that even, as pastors, I think we can be honest that we pray like, God, just a break would be nice from all this, or just a glimpse of goodness. Like, can you bless me a little here, like now? And, I think that's the challenge is how do you prepare people's hearts to look at the bigger reward that comes and not focus on the here and now. Aaron, your take?
Agreed. And it's really hard to do. You said we're sensory. And so we see what we see. We experience, we hear, we feel, all the things of this world that are right in front of us. And even when I say, hey, I'm going to focus on eternal things, and be as mindful of those things as I can be. And 5 minutes later, I've gone off the path. That's why I stress how important it is to be in prayer and in the Word every single day. There's no other way. I can't think of any. Well, I mean, there are other ways. There's this. Being in relationship with those who are sharpening you, and iron sharpens iron. So growing in God's Word, growing in your relationship with him through prayer and growing in relations with others for the sake of supporting one another, building one another up in his name. And then being true disciples and sharing the gospel with others. You can't do any of those without the other. Mm-hmm. You can't. I'm not gonna say what you can't do.
Yeah.
In my own head, I know sort of what the process is. I can't share the gospel with others if I don't know it, if I'm not in it. Mm-hmm. I can't be growing in relation with my God if I'm not talking to him. Mm-hmm. And so without those things, I think that we would continue to focus on the here and the now, what's in front of us, what we see, what we hear, what we feel. And a lot of what we see, hear, and feel is not good. Most of what this world puts in front of us that we experience on the daily is not good. Mm-hmm. So...
And I think even the fact that some churches and preachers and Christians in general take the Beatitudes and try and make them about the here and now shows how warped our heart is to be focused on the here and the now. Yeah. Because when you look at those verses, the reality is real life and practical living tells you that those things are not for now. Mm-hmm. That's not how this world works. You don't just all of a sudden become meek and inherit everything. You don't all of a sudden become, hungry.
It's the opposite.
Right.
It's contrary.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it tells you that that's not the formula.
Yeah.
That this isn't do these things to get these things in the here and now. But there's a lot of preachers and churches that take the Beatitudes and try and make them about the here and now.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what they mean.
Yeah. I think, and I think Jesus' audience that day would have recognized that, because stuff I was reading too was like this was contrary to society at that time too. Right. And it was this idea that he's preparing his hearers, because the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, again, it's not stuff you would immediately think of, or it's contrary to how we see the world working around us. And so it's kind of, he's just like setting the stage, like, buckle up, because there's some stuff coming that's going to be hard to hear.
Well, and that's what we're going to do over the next 2 months is we're going to go through the Sermon on the Mount. We're doing a sub-series of Matthew called City on a Hill. And in the next couple of verses, he talks about, that we as Christians are called to be a city on a hill, a light into, the darkness. Mm-hmm. Like, we're supposed to stand out in a different way. And now he's going to get into a whole bunch of different categories of life and say, this is how the world does this. This is how we do this. And we're going to dive into each one of these. And it's going to be, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. City on a hill. That's what we're called to be. Is not that we are on the hill to show off or to say, look at us. Mm-hmm. We're on the hill because we are his example on this earth of how to live this life. Mm-hmm. And we need to be ready for the persecution that comes with that. Mm-hmm. I think that's how he starts off the Beatitudes is look, as a city on the hill, everybody's going to be against you. They're going to be like, oh, look at you. You think you have it all figured out. You think you Christians are so good. You think, like you're so above us and you look down on us. And it's like, no. But Jesus calls us to this life so that we would stand out and be an example of him as best we can be as fallen creatures, and we're supposed to be different than this world and stand out to point you towards him. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to dive into.
Looking forward to it. Are you?
Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the message. Thanks for the path that you've chosen, that the calling that you heard and followed to be a pastor. I've never seen people so excited.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
your service, everybody was so excited to be there.
Yeah.
So many people came up and they were like, that was my first time seeing an ordination installation.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully one of many that happened at GraceHill.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was a special day. And yeah. Thanks for all you guys did to make it happen. So
I didn't do anything, but
he really didn't. But you're welcome.
Yeah. Aaron did.
Thanks for the music.
Yeah.
Until next time, come back, okay?
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. God bless.
Thanks.